It's March 29th, 2018. You're listening to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. So.
This is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again.
Hello, and welcome to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, coming to you as always from Studio B here in the Co-Prosperity Sphere. Thanks as always to Lumpen Radio. And I should say that we're in the community of the future. As you can tell, in the future, things don't always go perfectly in the future. But I think that's fine. Things are still rosy, looking good. Thanks to everyone who is listening live on 105.5 FM Lumpen Radio. If you are listening live, either on your radio or on the TuneIn app or the Lumpen Radio app, hop on into the live chat. That's tlk.io/WLPN. And if you, just hop on there and listen to all the chatter and correct me when I say inaccurate things and hot takes and so on and so forth. I want to thank all of you guys who are listening via podcast and wherever you may get your podcasts from. I just say iTunes, but I think the kids these days get their podcasts from all over the place. Got a bunch of really nice reviews lately. I think a couple weeks ago I was complaining that we hadn't gotten any reviews in a while, and thanks. Only one anti-Dust Brother comment on there, which is a pretty good ratio. So thanks you guys. A very fair critique as well, I might say. For those of you who are new, there is a little... We have to give a bit of a rundown into what this show is all about. Keeping up with the theme of not being entirely ready, I was just also pushed out of my opening monologue speech, which I've only said 131 times at this point, so I don't have it memorized. But if I string this out long enough, it'll make it seem like I'm not just wasting time for it to load, but the internet's kind of slow here. But anyway... The goal of the Insiders Roundtable is to open up into how the people making, selling, marketing, and facilitating the beer getting into your glass feel about the topics that are a part of their everyday lives. Many of my greatest beer experiences have been talking about beer while sharing beers with people whose opinions I respect and admire. And it's these experiences that I hope to capture with the Insiders Roundtable. And with that, I'd like to introduce my guests. But first, I want to mention that the opinions of my guests are their own and only their own and don't reflect any opinions of, let's say, I don't know, Lumpen Radio or the Beer Temple or anything like that. So we'll just get right into it. Kind of crowded. Going to turn on the fan. Some big sweaty folks in here today. So there you go. Me being one of them. I've already taken off my sweatshirt. Don't have a deep V, unfortunately, but I'll just have to cope. My first guest, who is the senior guest on here? Is it? I think it might be you, Brian.
Hello.
How are you, man? Brian Roth.
I'm good. It's happy opening day for baseball. The Cubs and White Sox off to a good start.
Yes. And it was a good game. It was. Did the Sox also do well today? I wasn't really paying that close attention, but people seem to be excited.
Which Sox?
Oh, the White Sox. Oh,
the White Sox.
You're a Red Sox fan.
White Sox. Yeah, White Sox. Great.
Yeah,
that's good. I love baseball, so today is particularly exciting. basketball season is officially over for me. So
Yeah.
so it's baseball all the way.
That was an amazing game, I will say. But don't worry, we hope to avenge your loss in just a few days when Villanova plays Kansas. And maybe I would have rather have played Duke. I'm not lying. Well, what I said was I would rather lose to Kansas, but I'd rather beat Duke. Me being on the Villanova team, I speak in the first person because I have a lot. I mean, there's a lot that I do. I mean, if I don't, I can step on a crack on the sidewalk. I can not knock on wood at the right time. All those things will lead to a loss. So I have to really be on my game to make sure that I do my part to ensure a victory. But I wanted to congratulate you. You took on a new role. You're the editor of the Sightlines editor at GBH now, or what's
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Austin and Michael have entrusted me with guiding some of the more daily kind of newsy topic stuff that shows up on the site, which has been great. I think that I've been able to put my own kind of personal touch on it, which means lots of charts.
Totally. I know. I've noticed. I've noticed that you've put your personal touch on there. I think it's cool.
It's been great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. And you've got the Deep V back on, so you know what's what. Cool. My next guest is Mr. Ray Daniels of the Cicerone Certification Program. How are you?
I'm president and accounted for, sir.
Yes. And I wanted to congratulate you on 10 years for the Cicerone
Thank you.
program. And I also want to say that I deeply regret not being able to go to the celebration. I heard it was a great time.
You were missed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we took attendance.
But I think you would be happy to know that I missed it because I was teaching a class on beer.
Excellent.
Beer education.
Beer education. All education is good education.
Yeah. So how was it?
It was awesome. Awesome. We had a fantastic time. I kept it together, which is always in doubt.
I want to mention that's funny you say kept it together because no fewer than 3 different people, independent of one another, mentioned how they wanted to see you cry. Like that was the you're gonna
that was
go.
The appeal of going to
the only thing that was mentioned. I want to go there. I want to see Ray cry.
Oh well,
I won't say who, but three different people.
Yeah.
But then I did hear that you did keep it together.
Yeah,
so
just barely. There was a delivery of a very well timed IPA to the stage that helped a lot.
Good. And then, so what are your numbers at now? 10 years in.
Big.
Yeah.
We're gonna hit 100K here before long
for certified beer service.
Yeah.
That is it's almost unbelievable. I was looking up the emails from when I took my certified beer server because this part of this class, people were asking. They were talking about taking the tests and stuff like that, and we just got to talking, and yeah, it was funny. You were emailing me from your Ameritrade or
Ameritech, yeah.
Ameritech, yeah.
If you've lived in Chicago long enough, you actually remember what Ameritech was. But
yeah. So it's really awesome to see. That you're at,
it's pretty crazy.
That's cool. Well, congratulations.
We got people from 50 countries, 50 countries around the world certified in the program these days. So,
I mean, realist. Did you think that it was gonna ever be 50 countries?
No freaking way.
And it's awesome. It's so cool that people care enough about this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It certainly is. It has been, the dream. And of course, the story I always tell is all the things I screwed up before I got to this, the Real Ale Festival and some other education efforts I made in the 90s. And, there's a bunch of things that and trying to start a brewery in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
My office window today looks out on the building that Randy Mosier and I came closest to starting a brewery in 1997. And of course, there are 3 breweries on the block now. But then,
Right.
but then the neighborhood ran us out with pitchforks, and
Right.
so,
Beer.
yeah, we might have just been a little ahead of our time.
That's awesome. And hey, I mean, don't they say being an entrepreneur is not being afraid to kind of fail and get up and
Going
try again?
Yeah, I heard that recently, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's silly. I was like, oh wait, I guess I did that. Oh, all right.
Yeah. Well, awesome. It's great having you on as always,
It's
and
great to be here.
really cool milestone. 10 years. That's pretty awesome. My next guest is Ashley Brandt.
Good to be here, sir.
How are you?
Awesome.
What's
Having
new
a
with
great
you?
time. I just got back from a family trip to Mexico, so things are
Okay.
good.
Ashley is the well, you're not the beer attorney. You're not just a beer attorney.
I'm one of the beer attorneys, I guess.
You're a beer,
Yeah.
You're an attorney,
There-
and you know
there's
about
a-
legal beer things.
a group of writers. There's a group of attorneys. There's
Mm-hmm.
fun stuff.
Nothing as beloved as a good beer attorney in the eyes of consumers. They
Except
really,
a good beer.
yeah, right. Maybe that.
You're one word too far.
Yes. Any good beer down in Mexico?
Dos Equis.
Okay.
No, it was a Club Med. I hate to say so. No Pacifico. Nothing fun.
Nothing
It's
coming
just
in.
all they had. I don't know if they're locked up or some distributor had slipped somebody some cash, but it was or a brewery most likely. It was a tied house down there.
Last year I was in Tulum, and I went to a place that had craft beer. You know, they had it like on signage for it out front, and I was like, oh, let me pop in. And they had local craft beer, but they were serving. Ray, you'd love this. They were serving the beer in howlers, just like not from the brewery, just the brewery, I guess, delivered howlers, and then when they were ordered, they just bring you out.
You posted pictures of that. I remember.
Yeah. It was. It didn't do the beer any good
Well,
to
whatever.
have been sitting in 100-degree heat for who knows long in a howler. But yeah, I should have brought that one back. Saved that one for Zach Rotello at Olympic Tavern, Mr. Growler. He would have. He would
a
have
lot of
enjoyed
other
it. But
stuff.
other
Though.
than
There's
that,
mezcal. There's tequila.
sure. But I wanted to see what It was a local IPA, as they call it down there.
IPA.
Yeah, IPA.
A good IPA.
It was a good, not a very good IPA. Well, thanks for.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Did you come back from Mexico just for this?
Yes,
Thanks.
absolutely.
That's
I
cool.
left my family.
Oh, they're still there. They're here, so you're going back down. Cool. There is Skype. I mean,
That's true.
Brian has never managed to make it in, but whatever.
He's a busy man.
Yeah. My next guest is I think Dan. I think you're next, Mr. Dan Pichel, 5-Timer Club.
yeah.
You get a smoking jacket now.
Waiting on my size.
Yeah. All right. Up from Miami.
Yeah.
Right.
Live in La Vida.
Miami. Is that how you call it now?
I try not to patronize the Spanish language. So, I'm in town to speak on the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I managed to schedule some conferences around it, just coincidentally. So, yeah, it's nice to be back home.
Awesome. What's new with you? What's the well? I think we might get into a little bit about what the beer scene is like in Miami, but it's known there are certain regions in the people who are kind of deep into the hobbyist side of it. I'll call it. I don't know, the rare release side of it, and two areas, probably the two most notorious areas for people like that are Chicago and Southern Florida. So
Yeah, I'm just an abomination at
how
this point.
how do they stack up? Are they is come on, say that the Florida people are worse. Come on, throw some shade.
No, I don't know what that means. I'm not.
I love
No,
all
I'd
people
say
and all
it's-
things. I have.
No, I'd say they're just different markets. Chicago's far more established than South Florida market. I've been traveling to Florida for 7 years, and I was going to gas stations trying to find High Ally 4 or 5 years ago.
Now you can
and
get it here.
Yeah, exactly. So, and now, yeah, exactly right. So it's finally come full circle. I can move back to Chicago now comfortably.
Perfect.
So-
And how about those fruited Berliners? Are they all they're cracked up to be? There's a name for the style now, right? Isn't it like
Florida Weiss?
Florida Weiss.
Yeah.
That's right.
I wasn't on the naming committee for that.
How are they, though?
They're good. No,
I think I've only had them like once
I've
in my
brought them in a
life
few
or something.
times here. So.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, usually when I bring them in.
Oh, is that a
Yeah.
Florida Weiss, those things?
the pink
The
ones? Yeah.
super pink
That's
beers?
what color beer is.
Wakefield stuff.
Yeah.
They're-
Do other people do it?
Yeah, there's more people doing it. It's popular. I mean, if you
Can
kind
you
of
talk a little bit about what, for some people out there who don't, like, do you know what is that on the Cicerone exam, Ray? Is the Florida Weiss on? He's shaking his head no.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's obviously a subtropical climate in Florida, and
For sure.
so having something that's a little easier to drink, maybe not as heavy. Although surprisingly, it's the pastry capital of the country and also the Florida Weiss capital. So I can't even say it's about having something that's light and refreshing because cupcake IPAs are a thing.
Yeah.
And also from Florida, so it's the pastry kingdom down there.
Okay, they just like sweet.
Yeah,
Sweet-
pretty much, right?
Sweet and sour and
Yeah,
sweet and
just
sweet.
on the light and dark spectrum.
Candy.
But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, candy bars and sweet and sours.
Yeah.
Cool. I want to talk about. Have you guys heard about the style that they're trying to, or that people in San Francisco are trying to claim as their own? I think it's like the San Francisco Brute IPA. Have you heard about that?
I just saw the headline today.
Oh, you did?
But
Mr. Adam Smith. Why don't we just move right along? Adam Smith of Maplewood
Hello.
Brewing. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good. It's been a long time since you've been on.
Yeah, it's been a little minute. I think.
What,
I was
any
waiting-
news since you were last on? Nah, nothing's happened at Maplewood.
Nothing. No.
No.
Put the sign up for sale. No, we're done.
No.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, we opened up our tap room in December,
Yeah.
and it's been going really, really well. And earlier this year, we released whiskey for the first time, aged whiskey for the first time. So, yeah, is this not close enough?
That's fine.
Too close,
No. It's just up higher and
because I'm tall.
yeah, because you're a tall man. There you go. Hit him in the face.
It's
with
been
it.
too long.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So, yeah, it's going really well. Everything's going really well at Maplewood, yeah. The lounge. Come and get a slushie.
Oh yeah, you have a slushy
We have a
machine.
slushie machine. And,
Is it like
we
a
got beer, too.
New Orleans style slushy machine, or
We do
Deca-
pina colada
Ah.
and mudslide right now.
even better?
Yeah.
Do you really?
Yeah. Yeah. It's called a pug slide, though,
Ah.
because it's got our Fat Pug Stout and our Fat Pug Whiskey.
Cool. Well,
Yeah,
thanks
that's
for
about
making it out here.
Thanks for having me.
When are you guys going to be distilling some stuff and selling it?
Well, right now you can get the whiskey.
Okay.
So there's 3 whiskeys. Fat Pug is our. It's kind of inspired by our stout.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got some notes that you're, I think, not really accustomed to with a whiskey. So like dark chocolate, some cocoa powder, things like that. And as it's aged in the oak, you start to pick up like caramel and. Have you ever had a chocolate raisin? It's like old. I don't know if it's old people candy. I really enjoy
A
them.
reason?
REISEN, I believe it is. Reason. They're
Maybe
good.
I have.
You gotta check it out. It's like
Okay.
a toffee. You ever had one of those?
I don't think so.
Oh, dude.
I don't know.
You gotta step your candy game up.
My old man candy game. Got to go in and
Keep it
raid
in
the
your
candy
pocket,
dish.
right? Yeah.
Got to find
So
some
damn.
candy dishes and raid them.
Hand them out.
But I brought some of the Fat Pug whiskey, so you could try that one.
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah, we got 100% malted rye, and that we're never gonna brew again unless we get a mash filter.
I was gonna say, how do you? It's just how do you do 100% rye mash? Isn't
A
it-
lot. We do a lot of liquid enzymes, and then we're just doing step mashes.
Speaking of liquid enzymes, I mean that's what this Brute IPA thing is.
Oh, I was like,
Right?
what? Where's he going with
I think that's what they do, right? They dump a bunch of amylase in
Yeah,
there,
endogenous enzymes, right? Yeah.
and then it just.
I'm sitting here reading about it right now.
Oh, are you? Okay, yeah. So then it dries the beer out like super duper dry.
Did they do extra brute and
Yeah,
demi
well,
and
they're
sec?
calling it
Demi-sec.
extra brute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing I haven't got obviously. you
Yeah.
know, but he says, well, it started out with his like triple IPA, and he didn't want to put sugar in it, so he used the exogenous enzymes to do it. And it's like, well,
What?
so then how is it any more brute than an IPA brewed with sugar, which is like Pliny and
Yeah.
most of that was what that whole style was about. So I don't know.
That's what I asked. That was my initial question when someone told me about the style was, I was like, have you ever had like a Pizza Port IPA? They're like bone dry. But I guess these are even more dry. I mean, those are pretty dry. And especially, I mean, I like to bring it up when you're on, but the BU to GU ratio, I mean, that's what it's all about anyway. It's going to be perceived as kind of
well,
bitter,
I mean, you
right?
know, carbonation definitely plays a role in our perception of balance.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it'd be really interesting to do a really highly attenuated IPA with lower bitterness and high carbonation.
Well, isn't that what this? I think that's exactly what this brute IPA
Yeah. So,
is.
well,
yeah.
you know, but it's and then okay. So, what's your alcohol level? You know, what was the base malt? But if they're saying they're making a triple IPA, and then they're using the enzymes just to try and dry it out a little bit instead of putting sugar, it's like, well, okay, then it's not going to be any really different than a double IPA
I think
anyway.
they're known for being highly carbonated as well.
Which would also be great.
Yeah.
But again, personally, I would like to see the IBUs come down some because carbonation and IBUs definitely go in the same direction from a balance point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to crank that carbonation up, you can reduce the IBUs and get the same effect.
So is the ABV range same as a traditional IPA?
Well, this one they said was
Or we don't know.
triple IPA. I don't know.
Oh,
The other thing, here's another question, and this is open to anyone, is why does this have to be a style? Why can't it just be their take on IPA? That they do it this way, and that's really cool, rather than... So the first time I heard about it was when people were trying to name it and kind of take ownership of the style. It's just interesting, I guess. Is it because people want styles now? Is it that they're style crazy?
we did a beer with graham crackers in the mash, cinnamon, vanilla, and coffee beans.
But you didn't call it pastry.
And the ferment. It was a golden ale.
Ah.
And it, quote unquote. But we got that question so often. What kind of beer is it? I was like, well, it has cinnamon and vanilla and coffee. What does it matter? I mean, it tastes like coffee cake.
Don't try and define me, man.
Yeah, exactly. But I maybe you're onto something with that. That everything has to have a category.
Oh no,
and
you
that
can't.
Pastry stout.
You can't name the movement, or the movement's over.
Well, right. I mean,
You think so? New
Treehouse and Heady Topper don't have the name of the style on there, right? It doesn't say like a hazy, juicy style IPA.
Well, you can just make one up and a Fluffenhofer. I have
Right.
the Fluffenhofer
But they
style.
don't. They just said those were IPAs, is what I believe they called them, right?
I think I've run into situations talking to brewers where part of it has just been for customer ease of identification, where giving it whatever kind of moniker will help someone come in and understand what it is they're drinking. I was speaking with a brewer in upstate New York just this past week who had made a Belgian strong ale, but had used honey in it, and so in order to help get that across, listed it as a Belgian honey ale. I don't know if such a thing technically exists, but the point being,
What did he
just
call
to
it? I'm
make
sorry.
it a little easier, he called it a Belgian honey ale.
I mean, I don't know if it's a style, but that's just a descriptor.
It's a descriptor, and I mean, come on, the base, and there's a point at which description and style, meld or blend, if you will. And I mean, styles are,
I mean, Michael Jackson was kind of the king of that, just
Yeah.
like naming them as
right,
a descriptor.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so you having a useful description for something that includes a style designation does not then make that a style. So it's like, okay, Brute IPA, that's a great description,
Sure.
but is it a style? Well, not at this point. Heck no.
You know, it is a
Right.
style. Hazy, juicy
Yeah.
IPA, hazy, juicy double IPA, and hazy, juicy pale ale.
According to
Well,
the
here's
Brewers
here's another Brute IPA from Magnolia that looks like a hazy juicy, but apparently it's Brute.
That's brute.
Oh, because it's dry.
So
no.
Extra
and it's
brute?
like 6.9% ABV, 25 IBUs, but
Too many.
high carbonation, all that stuff. I would like to
That
try
sounds
this.
great.
Although
That sounds-
it's off-putting. The appearance to me is off-putting, but
But pretend it's a hef.
But it looks like it's in a
a
hef glass,
heffa
actually.
PA.
that hefs
hefpa.
hefs are not that cloudy.
You're right.
Ever.
No, you're right.
True, you could see through a hef. It's hazy.
Yeah, exactly. There is a patina of haze.
Patina of haze. There you go. Haze, funky haze patina. So
Someone just got a beer name.
Funky Haze Patina. Is it a Tone Loc song?
yeah, it is. I can think of a beer pun name for Tone Loc, but I won't go there. Instead, where I will go is there any beers, hazy, brut, honeyed, golden, or otherwise, that people have had lately that they are excited about or that they are looking forward to try? Anything? Anything at all? Anyone? No beers.
No.
Okay, cool. All right,
No.
moving right along. Well, I have had a beer that I had recently. It is from OEC, which is Be United is an importer, and they have
right.
kind of like an in-house brewery and blending operation that they do, and they take some of the beers that Be United imports, and they have some great stuff. They do, is it Koichi or Hitachino is how I think a lot of people know them from. They do a lot of wonderful Saisons. They do Schneiderweiss. They do Hansens. And they sent a beer over that was
Schlenkerla.
3-year. Yeah, they do
recently
Schlenkerla.
put
Yeah,
that in cans.
that's right. And Tipo Pills they do. Yeah, the one thing is they're canning stateside. They're sending their stuff over in tankers and
They've
canning it
invented this,
stateside.
like the whole bladder system.
How
Be United is amazing.
yeah, super cool, very kind of innovative and
Yeah.
trying to stay relevant in a
Are they-
fresh, crazy
Are
market.
they fermenting on the way here, or are they?
I think they're at least conditioning.
Interesting.
But, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. I would agree.
no, they would explode if they were actively fermenting.
Well,
but,
yeah. You don't have temperature control and come on.
Yeah.
What are those bladders
Fermentation is
rated?
not a mindless,
Yeah.
train. It's got to be
Especially goose, You're
controlled,
shipping
yeah.
goose in a bladder. Who the hell knows what happens?
But anyway, so this beer, I don't know if this was shipped over in a bladder, the goose. I don't know if that's the case for those beers. They're not doing it for all their beers. But they took 3-year-old Scarambeca Cherry Creek, blended it with a sake that they import, and then aged it in wine barrels, I believe, for a year,
Sounds
18 months.
spectacular.
Oh, it is amazing. It is really, really, really good. So
Did you bring some?
Do you have it?
I do have it. That's what I'd be saying if we were sitting in my bar right now.
No.
But I'm not. We're not there, so I don't have it.
Did you hear OEC did a beer where the barrel aged? I don't remember exactly but all the barrels froze,
Oh,
and so then they dumped the barrels and ended up aging those longer. So they had like this kind of spontaneous Eisbach,
that's
Eisenbach,
cool.
if you will. So the stuff that they're doing is really cool.
Don't tell the TTB.
right. No, Eisbach is
seriously, yeah.
illegal, right?
Right.
And you
Not
guys
for
can
us.
just grab that and move
Yeah.
it back and forth. Okay.
I'm trying to share.
Okay. So is there literally no other beer that anyone's had since they've been on the show last, even that day? No beers on the table. Logan will be very upset.
I had a beer. I had a beer yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a gift. So I stopped drinking beer for a little while, and then I was holding on to this birthday beer someone gave me. Just a little bit. Month.
John
An hour.
Barleycorn.
An hour.
It was a month. It was an
Master
It was
John
an hour. I
Barleycorn.
made it 45 minutes.
It was Frem, I think I'm saying that right. They're
Yeah.
like outside of Portland.
Uh-huh.
And they did a Belgian triple aged in sherry barrels. And it was really, really nice.
They make great beer.
They really do.
It's like PRF or PFR.
PFRIEM, I think.
The PF Chang offshoot, I think, is what it is.
Yeah.
PF Rem is how you pronounce
Exactly.
it.
Yeah. It was beautiful. It was awesome. It was a really good beer. I'm
Yeah.
always impressed with them, like you said.
Yeah,
That was good.
really good stuff. Their General So's double is
Oh, yeah. I'm a firecracker chicken. Barrel aged, of
pale
course.
ale. Pale ale, yeah.
Yeah.
Pale ale.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of that. Really good joke. That joke was so good we should leave it and never mention it again. Anybody else? Beers?
I would give a shout out to Kickstand Brewing over in Detroit.
Oh,
Little
never heard of
little pub brewery starting to do a little canning. A long time buddy of mine, Mike Bardalis, is the brewer over there, which is why I have some in my fridge because he brought some over last time he came to town. But making some really solid beers, beer flavored beers. Just real solid stuff. I was drinking a porter tonight before I came over. Just very, very nice beers. Nice to see that kind of thing going on.
Very cool. Kickstand.
Kickstand.
Very cool. Anything
Yep.
for you, Dan?
The recent Voodoo Barrel Age collection. My wife is from Western Pennsylvania, and I received a lovely gift set from my father-in-law, including the shirt I'm wearing tonight and the recent round of stouts. So that was a lot of fun to try some of those this past week.
Is that a Voodoo shirt you're wearing?
It is.
What is on that shirt?
It's Zangief from Street Fighter.
Oh, I thought it was like a.
It's a chest. Yeah, it's an 8-bit version of his chest.
I thought it was like a horrific bullet hole wound.
No. No, it's
Doesn't it look like that?
Yeah, I don't know what.
Doesn't it look like a terrible bullet hole wound?
It's
like an exit wound or something.
No, it's Zangief's chest. I grew up playing Street Fighter in
But
middle school.
Zangief's chest wasn't all red. It was.
Yeah, but look, you got.
It was skin colored. Yeah, I see. No, I get it now.
I got beer abs. It's awesome.
You do have beer abs. That is pretty good.
So you knew right away that was
Up his.
Oh, I'm muted.
Yeah.
Damn you, Sergio.
Yeah, one of the stouts I think they're calling Zangief because no one can read the.
But
Cyrillic
you
writing
knew
on the
when
back.
you saw that shirt.
Oh yeah, no, I
You
knew
knew right
before.
away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Damn.
That's pretty good. Because I saw that, and I didn't know what it was. But now I know. Yeah. Anything for you, Brian, or are you not? Do you drink beer anymore? Are you?
Occasionally,
Okay.
from time to time.
What are you drinking right now? Something hazy. But is
At
it
this moment,
is it
I am
juicy?
actually. I am drinking something.
Out of an
somewhat hazy.
IPA
It's
glass.
marked on the can as 6 SRM, but as you can see, it is. You individually can see it's not that. No, it's a brewery here in North Carolina called Southern Pines. They do a lot of kind of rotating seasonal and one-off IPAs. I've never been there, but they package and distribute here in Durham. And that's kind of the way that I know them because they've got a new IPA brand showing up pretty regularly. This is the first New England version that I've seen, and it's working out okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
I do have to mention that you're listening to 105.5 FM Lumpen Radio Chicago. This is the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I am Chris Quinn, and I am joined by my guests Brian Roth, Ashley Brandt, Adam Smith, Dan Pichet, and Ray Daniels. Ray, was there something you were about to say?
Just to be totally pedantic, that beer would probably be about 6 SRM if it were filtered first. Because hazy beer looks darker. And in fact, if you read the lab technique for doing color, the first thing you have to do is the beer has to be clear. It has to be
Right.
filtered first.
So this beer has no SRM. Yeah, pass it around the board. Yeah, no beer on the
I get
table, but you can pass beer over the board. That's fine. Logan doesn't mind that at all. So, yes. So, good. Some good SRM discussion going on. Dig it. Anything else, Brian?
We actually, in North Carolina, we just got Firestone Walker just started distributing here not long ago.
Cool.
So Pivo was high on my list of beers to pick up once it first got here about 2.5 weeks ago.
Nice. You'd had it before, I assume? Or no?
I had had it a couple of times before. Whenever I travel to up north to meet friends in D.C., it's easily found in Virginia, so that's usually been a purchase I'll make there. But otherwise, it's in the regular rotation now, I can assure you that much.
Nice. All right, I think it's about time we take a little bit of a station break, right? Serge has got some perfectly cued snippets of info about other shows that are out there on Lumpen Radio, so you can listen to them, see what the station has to offer, and then we'll be back with more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable.
The Lumpen Record Swap is back Sunday, April 22nd. Vendors and vinyl enthusiasts from across Chicagoland will converge on the Co-Prosperity Sphere for this semi-annual swapathon. Lumpen Radio DJs will provide the soundtrack. All you have to do is bring a bad yet healthy vinyl obsession. It's the Spring Lumpen Record Swap, April 22nd, only at CPS. This event helps support the programs on Lumpen Radio. Punk rock roars back into the Co-Prosperity Sphere April 27th with a super secret powerhouse lineup. This special show, brought to you by the Jagoffs, who present punk rock and donuts, will be a spring ripper, with the bands playing through the famous Lumptronic sound system. It's live, it's punk, and it's April 27th only at CPS. This noisy little show benefits Lumpin' Radio.
Lumpin' Radio is supported by Mars Brewing, makers of handcrafted beers in Bridgeport. Mars Brewing's new tap room is now open Wednesday through Sunday at 3630 South Iron Street. More information and taproom hours at marsbrewing.com. That's MARZbrewing.com. What's Mars is yours.
Welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, and I am joined by a whole slew of wonderful guests. They are, in no particular order, Brian Roth, Ashley Brandt, Adam Smith, Dan Pichet, and Ray Daniels. All right, guys, I need a little bit more feedback than the last question I asked, which was, were you drinking any beers you've had lately? This one actually takes a little more thought, so I'm not very optimistic. But what do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about the future of distribution, or do you want to talk about how it doesn't matter because craft is dying on the vine? What do you want to talk about? Distribution? What are you going to say?
The most enthusiastic response I think most people
I was going to say baloney.
Baloney. Right.
I was actually going to say something else. I had to add it myself.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's honestly, I think we should talk about the craft growth slowing, and then we'll go to distribution. I think one might flow into the other. Plus, Adam wanted to do distribution, so I had to not do that first.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's why I ask. I ask because what I want to do is enrage you, because it gets the most out of you.
Oh, now I'm fired up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm doing it. So I think what you're looking for is thank you, and you're welcome. So anyway, so it was what I call, there's just been a whole bunch, and we talk about it all the time. Some would say ad nauseum on this show about, the squeeze and the slowdown and stuff like that. My favorite term for it is the squeeze, which the guy from Green Flash coined, as far as I know. But there was an article from Josh Noel, friend of the show and multi-time guest here. Don't know if he's in the Five Timers Club, but he's probably close. He had an article about how essentially brewery openings continue to accelerate. Closings are also accelerating, but at a much, much smaller rate. There's not the quote-unquote 0% failure rate that Dan and the bankers used to, tout to everybody back in the day, just so they could bilk us of our hard-earned money. But thank you for that, Dan, by the way. But anyway, so there are some closings, but we're still opening at a faster and faster rate. Meanwhile, the growth is slowing overall. Now, I think there's a lot to be said for how this is based on the BA's number, the Brewers Association numbers, and I think those are only, part of the story. But I do think that people are certainly concerned. I mean, I keep bringing it up on the show because there's always stuff being written about it. People like to talk about how craft beer is slowing down and how everything's getting tighter and harder. So I wanted to see what you guys thought. I don't know if you've specifically read the article or just generally if you think, is the music stopping? Has the music stopped? Are there too many breweries? Are there still room for plenty more breweries? Is it just a blip and then it's going to take off again? What do you think? You almost might. You are fired up. You tried to grab the mic.
Almost.
Then you grabbed a beer instead and you slammed it. Wow. Okay. All right, you're ready. Go for it. What's up, Adam?
Well, yeah, I think breweries are opening all the time, and especially here in Chicago, we see just boatloads of them almost every day. But I can only think of a couple that have failed or are failing, and I think as tap rooms are flourishing, that maybe the brands that are doing 1,000 barrels a month are beginning to feel a little squeeze, if you will. But I think the smaller guys are still doing okay, and if you are smart about it, you can grow into something. But I don't know if we'll ever have Sierra Nevada being as big as they were, right? Or a brewery like that. I don't know.
A brewery? I mean,
well,
there's plenty of breweries that are way bigger than
that. But will we have breweries
who grow
to that level again?
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I don't know, but I think you could still open a brewery and be successful if your goals are realistic. If you want to open a neighborhood tap room and serve beer to your neighborhood and be successful, yeah, you can do that. You can do that if you do it right, and even if you're doing it wrong, I think you could stay afloat.
Yeah, and that's where I think we've passed an inflection point. And that inflection point was when pretty much any damn fool who wanted to could own a brewery and wind up smelling like a rose.
Yeah.
Right? Do whatever they want to do. And, yeah, maybe they're not going to be the next Sierra Nevada, but, they're going to make a living and they're going to get along all right and they're going to pretty much be able to do whatever they want to do. And that's not the way business works. Business eventually becomes competitive. Business eventually requires management. And, we've kind of come into that era where, look, you can't just hang out a shingle and say I'm a brewer and succeed.
Yeah. I mean, I think about it, obviously not knowing a whole lot about the beer side of the brewing industry, but, just the banking piece is that I don't think anybody can say, what is the proper amount of breweries? Is it too many or is it not enough that are opening up? But rather that, the squeeze is being felt. You can take a look at Green Flash. Their struggles become a function of debt. And as you kind of look at Chicago, right? There's a lot of tap rooms opening. We talked about this on the drive down. That forces the next tap room to step their game up and step it up further. Each one down the line, that comes at a cost of capital. How much money is coming in? Who's backing it? What the people opening the brewery, do they have the resources to put the money in to build out the tap room that they need to be competitive in a crowded marketplace, and then ultimately have the wherewithal to establish and build a following behind it. And as competition increases, so too kind of do your costs, right? Your build out costs on your tap room, everything else goes up, forces you to borrow more money, and debt is ultimately what crushes anything during a downturn. You can take a look at the recession. You can take a look at businesses that have gone through cycles that a lot of the struggles can be a function of debt. If you're sitting with a clean balance sheet and minimal debt, you can ride out a storm, right? If you owned your building free and clear, you don't have you got to cover your taxes, your operating costs. You don't have to pay the bank. My payment's the same every month, and when it's not, that's a problem. So and when
you say that, you mean you're receiving?
My payment doesn't go down because your business is slow. And if it does, that's a rewrite, and it's something that we get concerned about. So, leverage is going to be a huge factor into companies as they grow. I think the local model, Maplewood, for instance, or places that want to serve a community and on a smaller scale, not have statewide distribution or regional distribution, national distribution. I mean, you read about Green Flash, right? They pull out of 32 markets and then another 10.
Yeah,
I had to count backwards to figure out how many states they were actually
right.
Yeah,
it's true, and it is kind of a return to form, I guess. I mean, Ray, you are probably the only one here who remembers the original slowdown because you tried to open up
That's right. I can just barely remember.
Candy from my pocket.
Well, you were the only one actively in
for have a reason
in the beer community, or maybe I don't know, trying to open up a brewery after it fell apart. Do you? I don't know. Do you see
Well,
it come? Do you
I
see any
would-
similarities with right before that bubble? And
Well,
this
yeah.
one?
So you point out, yes, I was trying to start a brewery in the middle of the downturn in the late '90s, and I was blithely oblivious to what was going on. It was like people, the people I knew were still drinking craft beer. The people I knew were still excited about craft beer. So yeah, full speed ahead. Let's go do this. And I remember turning around in Y2K, when we crossed the millennial mark there, and looking around Chicago and realizing that there were 10 breweries that had been founded in the city of Chicago, in the city limits, between 1990 and 2000, and that only 3 of them were still in existence at the dawn of 2000. And 2 of them were called Goose Island, and the other one was called Rock Bottom. And so one very smart entrepreneur, John Hall, and one very big company with very deep pockets involved there. And I thought, we're really lucky we didn't start that brewery, because we'd probably be on that, dead on arrival list or dead now anyway list. So yeah, are things different now than they were then? Heck yeah. Oh man, it is such a different world now. And I think Bart responded to this too. It's like, the difference is in the 90s, big breweries were trying to kill craft. Now the 90s, the big breweries are trying to co-opt craft. They're trying to embrace craft. They're trying to take it over. And what changed between now and then is big beer stopped growing, right? In the 90s, the beer distributors had their little machine that made their business go, which was big breweries, and they could count on a steady, small but steady growth every year from those accounts. And so as long as you took care of your AB, your Miller, your Coors, and your business would chug along, grow on 1 or 2% a year, and that kept everybody happy. They reached an inflection point in that late 90s, early 2000 point of view, somewhere in there. I'm not a real scholar on big beer, but they've been on a long, slow decline ever since. And so in the early 2000s, what really changed was America's beer distributors looked around and said, our curve's going the wrong way now because we've been banking on these big brewers. We got to do something to get this curve going the other direction. Let's try some of this craft beer stuff again. And that really helped fuel the renaissance. And that's where we are now, is that craft beer is an essential part of beer distribution portfolios, of retailer distribution, of retail sales portfolios, et cetera.
Of
it's
big
not,
beer
it's not going
portfolios
anywhere.
as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, absolutely. It's not
essential
going anywhere.
part of breweries of all size, really here in the States, or of all beer companies, whether they're maybe a Constellation or something like that. I don't think you can be a big player without having some craft sides to it. So do you? So now they're trying to co-opt it. How do you think that pretends to these 2,500 new breweries that are in the works? That's the crazy thing. So there's 6,200 breweries in the States right now in operation, and it just says 10 years ago there was 1,500, and now there's 2,500 supposedly in the works. So I mean, that's a huge percentage. So you're shaking your head, Adam. I mean,
That's a lot.
it's a lot.
I was just talking about how, you go ahead and do it. You could still be
Sure.
successful, but that seems like an awful lot.
Well, if Pico Brew is right, not to jump around,
Come on.
if every
Ray
bar,
owns a Pico Brew, right? Don't you?
What?
What's that? Oh,
You
yeah.
own a Pico
yeah.
Brew, right?
Yeah.
Really?
if every bar
The home-
becomes a brewery,
small homebrew
then
system.
yeah.
But even
well,
homebrewers poo-poo Pico Brew.
Yeah, yeah. I think the economic model has changed substantially in the last 15 years, 20 years, for sure. And we've talked about some of these ideas. I've talked about before that, I look at breweries like Beguile and Dovetail and Half Acre in Chicago now. And yeah, they're packaging breweries, but they're really making their money, I think, or their profits at least, in their tap room and in the on-premise sales, right? And 15 years ago, that was
On-premise or own-premise?
yeah,
sales?
own premise. Yeah,
Right.
for sure, own premise. Exactly, that's what I meant. 15 years ago, you were either going to be a production brewery or you were going to be a brew pub, and you were going to have a restaurant and a brewery co-located together. And by definition, that brewery was never going to be very big. And now it's like, well, yeah, we're going to be a production brewery, but we're going to have a tap house, and that's the winery model. I've quoted this figure before on this show that in the United States, 50% of all winery sales in the United States, 50% are direct to consumer. Right?
That's amazing.
That's either through their tasting rooms or through their direct to consumer sales of cases, bottles, et cetera, over time.
I mean, think about all the jug wine and
boxed
and all that stuff that's out there. That 50% is direct to consumer.
And I will say that's probably dollar based rather than
yes,
volume based,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
they had to fight for that right too.
Absolutely.
There was a long march to.
And there's been some very key things that have happened.
Yeah.
Shipping of wine, interstate shipping of wine.
Beautiful.
You can go to a UPS store and walk in with a case of wine and say, I want to ship this case of wine to my brother in, wherever. And they'll say, yes, sir, right away, sir, we'll do that. If you walk in with a case of beer and say, I want to ship this case of beer to my brother in the same state, they'll say, no, sir, we cannot ship beer. What?
Oh, but this is the case of
whoa,
wine.
wait a minute. Where'd that come from? Yeah, we can ship wine, we can't ship beer. Somebody 20, 25 years ago went around and spent the money, someone who was already rich already, went and spent the money to get wine cleared through all those channels and get that basis set because they have a wine-based business and they're doing wine shipping and they're making money off of selling wine direct to consumers. Nobody's ever done that for beer. So beer is hamstrung by that particular problem.
Yeah, absolutely. What was I going to say? I was going to say something else. What's up?
I was just going to say about own premises, you're making money day of. You're getting liquid cash, and when you're with a distributor, maybe you'll get paid in a month, and a couple months. So that's the other thing about having a tap room is, you're able to get money and have money. So I just wanted to. Ray had mentioned something, and I thought that was important to bring up.
Yeah. Any thoughts from you, Brian?
To put that in perspective, too, it certainly varies the margins that people are making, but in conversations I've had, you're looking at brewers making a minimum 3 times, at least what they've told me, what they make selling it in their own tap room, often more than that, versus what they would make selling, say, a keg or something through a distributor as well. And so when you've got 3/4 of the breweries in the U.S. who are producing less than 1,000 barrels, a lot of breweries, as they're opening, as we're talking about, eyeing it as something that'll be more community and local and even neighborhood based. Those are the kinds of things where you realize that, quality of life and success of a business doesn't have to mean, taking over a city or a state or a tri-county area, but can simply mean just, making enough money to ensure a comfort level for you and your employees. And a lot of these businesses are small in the number of employees they have, too. If you're making under 2,500 barrels, by Brewers Association count, you have an average of 2 to 3 full-time employees, more or less. Certainly, there'll be part-timers there too,
unless you have a tap room. Yeah.
Yeah, but and it's a case where the financial constraints, both in what the business plan presents to you against what you're able to do now, and most importantly, kind of what's becoming more normal behavior for beer consumers, it is a great place to be in.
Absolutely. I think anything. What do you want to say?
Well, there's another aspect of this that I was thinking about today, and that is that we're seeing this softness at the top amongst the regionals, amongst the nationals, and some of it is because local is what's in these days, but some of it is just, but again, maturity of the industry. It's requiring management. It's requiring some really hard-nosed decision-making, I think, by CEOs. And I was listening to a show on another radio network that does a lot of talking a week or so ago, and they were talking about CEOs, and they were talking about how entrepreneurs rarely make good CEOs. The people that have the idea, that bring the idea to life, really are not good at doing the things it takes to manage a business, have some discipline, do some planning, do the execution, and keep it going and keep it on the straight and narrow. And I think maybe we've reached the point where we still have a lot of these, regional and larger breweries that are still being run by their original entrepreneurs, and maybe their, time to be effective in those businesses has come to an end.
Is that the Freakonomics podcast? They did a 4-part series.
I was folding laundry out.
I think that's a really good point too, because I think just by virtue of the number of businesses that have opened in the beer industry, the relationships and information sharing that happens amongst these friends, I think really helps to boost that kind of perspective to people sharing not just what it might be on a making beer on a process side, but also what's being successful in terms of helping them succeed as a business too.
And I also, it's funny you should say that about things becoming softer at the top. I don't know. I'm kind of curious, how far down the top goes, because I'm seeing a lot of the, local breweries here that are the larger local breweries, but I certainly wouldn't say that they're regional, starting to branch out to other areas. Now, is it because they are growing? It's so I'm now in a position where I've seen people expanding so fastly into other markets, doing like, for the prime example would be pulling a Green Flash and going into all 50 states. And is that because there is really demand for it, or is that because they've got all this beer and it's got to find somewhere to go? And now I find myself just always curious when someone opens up in a new market. 3 years ago, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Now, oddly enough, sometimes I'm like, ooh, okay, I hope everything's good for them. And they're not just trying to fill the pipeline. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it is a weird area where I'm still not sure where the top is and how soft it is, how far down you go. Yeah. I think the little guys are doing okay. They're really little guys.
Yeah, I agree. And we saw a lot of that, filling the pipeline stuff in the 90s as well. That is one thing that we definitely saw. And I mean, Chicago Brewing Company, which is a long-defunct brewery here in Chicago, I remember them shipping, containers load of beer to California, to some distributor out there. And it's like, did they go out there and even visit the distributor or meet the distributor? No. They were just like, man, we sold a container full of beer. That's a win for us. And it went. Yikes, and, right. No follow-up, no sales support, nothing. Did they ever sell another container of beer to that distributor? No. Because that beer went out there and sat on the shelf. And by the time most people tried it, it was garbage.
I do think most breweries at least realize they need in a crowded market. Yeah. Certainly Chicago, if a brewery is setting something up without, or in here without distribution, or I'm sorry, sales support, internal sales support, I really question.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Yeah, just not going to happen. No, and I think, and that was one of the lessons of the late 90s, early 2000s, and that's part of what happened between 97 and 2002, 2003, was breweries figured out how to do that blocking and tackling of the beer business. And that was one of the inflection points of that time period, was people figuring out, hey, we just can't make beer and throw it out there. We actually have to learn this business, right? So we've done that, but now I think we're stepping up even to another level where strategy and mature management and all that stuff is going to be a key part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be on point. You got to know what's going on, and it's
and you look at some people. I mean, Jim Cook, founder of Boston Beer, Sam Adams. He hasn't been the CEO of that company for a long time. He's the face of it. He's the founder. He's the front guy, but he's always had a CEO to manage the business, to be the disciplined guy, to be the guy who makes sure projects are on track and all that stuff. That's not a bad model.
Yeah. No, although he's not doing so
well. Hot. Yeah, right. Well, they've got other issues and other things that happen. Yes.
But if you look at, I think if you look at where a majority of the growth is coming from, and this is something that Bart Watson at the BA has pointed out repeatedly, that it's the smaller guys who are doing this. And Ray, I think it's a great point in terms of the savviness that exists now. I think is much more aware both between the entrepreneurs that are starting these businesses, as well as even if it's coming from trade organizations, state guilds, BA, things like that. And so, I think it's a case where the awareness of where success can happen and how it can happen, whether it's just a case of conversations that happen between friends or the advent of having more information readily available at our fingertips. If you look at the closing rate over the last 4 years is well below what would be a normal amount.
Sure.
And there are all sorts of reasons that that would be, but one of them could certainly be because we've got people who are a bit more aware in what's important in terms of how they need to approach their business, which gets to all those great points that you're raising, that people are a bit more, I think, conscious of some of the things that will allow them to be a successful business today in the way that the market is changing so rapidly, week to week, month to month.
I want to mention quickly, you're listening to WLPN LP Chicago 105.5 FM Lumpen Radio. This is the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. And I wanted to, maybe on the flip side of what you were just saying, Brian, yes, maybe closings are well below maybe averages for other industries because people are more savvy now. It could also be that they are still up, and maybe the music is starting to soften, and maybe it hasn't stopped, but maybe this is just the tip of the iceberg. I don't want to be an alarmist, but I'm saying it could go the other way as well, that this is just the first little bit, and there's more to come. With 2,500 breweries in the
4 years, Bart was very clear that there should be more closings than what are happening in craft beer right now. And so and I would agree too. And this is something that I also wrote covering the news regarding kind of the BA's state of the industry and looking back at the past year, is that it's completely normal and there should be more closings. And if that happens, it's not necessarily that the music is going to stop and things are terrible and everyone should panic,
right.
But rather it's just a clear sign of a maturing and normalizing market.
As long as he's not Kevin Bacon saying everybody stay calm while they're all running past him in Animal House, which I don't think is the case. But anyway, what were you going to say, Dan?
No, I think one thing to take into consideration is the state of the overall economy too. We think about modern craft beer. We're talking about this on the way down, Chris. Like, what, Bourbon County, the original Rare came out in 2010.
Yeah.
Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2009.
All right.
It's like you think about where the beer industry is now relative to how the economy has recovered following the recession, that the current climate hasn't seen a bump in the road at all. I mean, it hasn't seen wide swathes of their supporters have to tighten their belt. Because I can tell you one thing, that if times were tough at the Pichet household, $35 adjunct pastry stouts would be something that I would objectively have to put at the top of the list. Like, I mean,
of what doesn't get cut?
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Diapers,
rock solid.
Diapers. Maybe.
No, I can wash
pastry
those.
stouts. Yeah. Right, exactly.
So no, I just think we haven't seen a belt tightening. Regardless of I don't see the economy tanking anytime soon, but there's a lot of expansion that's riding high on effectively entertainment dollars.
Yeah, it's a really great point, because if you look back at the recession, one of the things that a lot of craft beer enthusiasts will point at is the fact that craft beer grew exponentially during the Great Recession.
Right.
And it's a much different period now. It's also a case, and that's a great point regarding price point, is that the prices that people are paying now are obviously, for a whole host of reasons, different than what would have been, 9-10 years ago during the worst part of that as well.
And even talking about, even what Dan was saying, you can see how stratified craft beer has become, because you weren't saying that craft beer was going to be the first thing to go. You said these really almost, I don't want to call them novelty beers, but really kind of specialty, uber specialist, area, little niche of craft beer has to go. So even that just says, I think shows a little bit more maturity in where craft beer kind of is positioned in people's lives at this point.
I think the models that are have the best wherewithal are ones that are not one-trick ponies. There's a lot of breweries in the country that are built on this this model. It's almost like a glass cannon, right? It's like we gotta be a popular brewery with a really limited amount, with the craziest adjunct stout or whatever the flavor of the week is. And I don't know that that's sustainable, because I'm not saying like if times were tough that I would stop drinking beer, because I don't need to drink beer, but you'd have to think about how much you're spending, and I think
it's sustainable, more sustainable from a consumer standpoint.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as sustainable from a production standpoint. I don't think you can. I've yet to see, with a few exceptions, how anyone can stay the cool kid forever. I mean, even who I thought was untouchable, Russian River, is not as cool as they used to be. And if they're vulnerable, then, Hill Farmstead's going to be next. And then, I just think you can't be the coolest kid forever.
If they're making, a decent amount of money through their tap room and sales, and they're happy with where that puts them, just because they lose a little cachet with beer enthusiasts doesn't mean that they've lost something as a business.
Oh, both of those examples they're making world-class beers. I think what I was talking about, what Dan was saying, is if your only way of selling beer is by being the cool kid with something new and novel, which Russian River and Hill Farmstead certainly do not do. But
I think it's more than just being new and novel. I mean, I think there's a segment of the brewing, the craft beer industry in the United States that is nothing but a bottle count game. That for it to be a sought-after gem, it has to be one of a handful. And I mean, that model just simply doesn't scale, right? You grow it all. You make more than 400 bottles of something, then all of a sudden it's just not as desirable. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that is just think about.
Can you talk a little bit about? You were talking about this before. Could you kind of?
Yeah, I mean, you can think about on a national. This is obviously getting into the dark underbelly of the craft beer industry,
which seems to happen a lot when you're on the show.
But
you're always like, I don't know anything about it.
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is that if it's a matter of scarcity and exclusivity, like. It becomes a function of bottle count, essentially. Like, if you can say this is one of 350 bottles...
And you're saying consumers are taking note of bottle counts.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, look at Bourbon County Rare, right? Was it rare, or was it, they used the word rare, but it definitely wasn't rare in the sense of...
But it wouldn't matter if people weren't counting. So you're saying people were counting.
I really do, because I think
making decisions based on that.
Yes, absolutely. Like, I bet you, when you look at breweries that mention bottle count, and there are some that do, and there are some that don't. And when they do, and it's a low count, they're doing it for a reason. Because you're talking, it's a way to basically pinpoint the scarcity. This is one of 200 bottles, one of 300 bottles. And that will drive people out. It's a limit one bottle. You have to line up for 15 hours or some nonsense. And that is a segment, and it's successful. And there's breweries throughout the country that are building models that are based on exclusivity.
Are there any that jump to mind for you that are heavily in that game? I don't want to have you say that they're only that, but who jumps to mind when who puts out public notices about bottle counts?
KBBS.
How about that? Okay, so Toppling Goliath.
Yeah, I mean, just think about the $100 12-ounce bottle of beer, right? Mm-hmm. Jay Wakefield puts out a very limited count of bottles. I mean, sometimes bottles that are in the double-digit count. It's not. I mean, Toppling Goliath is obviously kind of a spectrum, right? You have Pseudo Sue in grocery stores everywhere, and then you have KBBS, which is the I guess the model for that kind of beer, right? And I think they actually do it right. I'll give them credit. Like, I think they actually, by laddering it, it's the best system. If they said, hey, KBBS goes on sale on Saturday,
line up.
The line would be, would have already started yesterday.
It's also the niche of the niche, though.
Yes, absolutely.
Such a small subset of beer drinkers.
The niche of the niche comment is a flashback for me. Having run the Real Ale Festival in the 90s, which my buddy Steve Hamburg used to always call cask ale a niche of a niche. I got to tell you, we didn't make any money with a niche of a niche in the 90s, so things have really changed since then.
Right, because now people are trading BMWs for a single bottle of KBBS, which actually happened. It truly happened.
It did.
And I remember I mentioned it on the show that someone was offering it. Someone told me that oh no, that trade happened. That guy traded his BMW for two bottles, one Assassin and one KBBS.
So a brewery like Toppling Goliath.
Best trade he ever made, apparently.
Shut up. Was it paid off or?
Yeah, right. You took the note.
There you go.
There you go. Payments due tomorrow. Later, bye.
So is something like KBBS sustainable because they can make, let's say, 500 of those, but they can go now. They've just expanded, have their own giant facility, and with that being said, they also, I don't know if they're still contracting out of BrewHub.
I don't think they are. I mean, I also don't think their business model has anything to do with KBBS. It's kind of like
I think you're right.
Think Three
I want
Floyds
to get
and
back
Dark
to
Lord.
what you were saying.
But I guess the beer geeks still buy into KBBS,
Yeah, sure.
even though they're making 20,000 barrels, maybe. I don't know how many.
I mean,
barrels
I don't think
guessing.
it matters. Like if you buy something for 100 and you can sell it for 1,000, I mean, you'll do it all day.
So they still okay. That's what I'm wondering. Like, can they grow as big as they have, and still have that?
Thinking about
$50 12-ounce bottle.
Yes.
think about
Thank you.
Three
Yes.
Floyds, right? Like, is Three Floyds' business model based on Dark Lord?
No, it's based on zombie dust.
Absolutely. Well, it is the cryptocurrency of the beer industry. But you think, but how much Dark Lord and Dark Lord Day plays a big role in their image. KBBS and Assassin plays a big role in
That
their
makes
image.
sense.
Well, yeah, and I mean that is this whole idea of specialty beers to build your reputation started all the way back with Sierra Nevada. I mean, Bigfoot was an annual release. It was
I brought a
the
bottle, by
original
the way.
vintage dated beer, right?
Yeah.
And did they make a lot of money on Bigfoot? Heck no. But did they build a reputation on Bigfoot? Did everybody want to have some Bigfoot?
Sure.
Even if you only got one bottle a year. There are still places. The Chicago Beer Society, last time I checked, in January was still doing a vertical bottle share of Sierra Nevada Bigfoot.
There
And
are still
it goes back
old-timers.
30 years. Yeah.
Really old, crotchety, creaky old timers like you, Ray.
Hey.
And my wife's on the board.
Get off
so
my lawn.
No,
Shut up.
Who actually who still get excited about it is what I was going to say. who really who care about that.
And the
that
Real
beer.
Ale Fest still happens under the Day of Living
Day of
Ale.
Living Ale.
Night of the Living
Yeah.
Ales, Day of the Living Ales,
Yeah.
yeah.
But that's still not quite what you were getting at, Dan, because in those instances, these breweries are using exclusivity and kind of street cred with the hardcore geeks to help get their brand awareness up and maybe get some cash in the door to help fund some expansions. But you're saying that there are breweries that maybe are just being like everything we do is exclusive, everything we do is limited, or a high portion of it.
Maybe not everything,
But a
because
high
obviously
portion,
you got to keep the lights on. But when every other month there's another
Cycle.
drop, I think to Cycle's credit, I think they actually fought it on the right axis. They fought it on supply. Every release they
What
put
are you guys
out.
talking about?
Cycle Brewing, I mean, they were kind of a darling of and still one of my favorite breweries in the country. But I give them a lot of credit because they saw the secondary market creep in. They had people hiring homeless individuals in town to line up and buy their limit 2
And
or limit 4 beers.
that's not a fable. That actually
No, that's
happens.
actually that happened. But what they did is they expanded, they increased supply.
Yeah,
So I mean, when they
that's
do a
so
release,
amazing.
it's either no limit or a case limit. I mean, something where it's almost negligible, right? It doesn't matter at that point. You're not buying it, and if people are looking to get the beer, it's almost like you'd pay for its cost, and maybe thanks for packing it. Here's $10 extra. Like it's nothing. And they did it right. Like you're never going to do away with the secondary market. If something is exclusive and sought after, people will figure out a way to sell it. I mean, personally speaking, and this is myself, like I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I know a lot of breweries, and understandably so, have an issue with it. But I mean, look at StubHub for God's sakes. I mean, it's obviously there's some legality and some components to it, but like. If there's a market for it, the market will prevail. You're not going to stop it.
How do you feel about aftermarket secondary sales, Ashley?
I have no problem with them whatsoever.
Okay.
Creating a market, why not? I mean, legally they're completely
legally
wrong,
it's
but,
problem, right? There's
really-
nothing. I mean, what's amoral about it? What's wrong with it?
As
right?
your
It's
attorney,
illegal.
I suggest you heavily purchase and sell in the.
I
secondary
am
market.
fascinated though that many of these breweries have held to their guns and not up prices to the point of the secondary market just because they could. I mean,
Well, hang
I
on.
think there are a few important points here. One, and to get to what you guys are talking about, there's a local example here in North Carolina in which having talked to the owners, they are fully embracing this idea that if they make something special and unique, they know it's going to end up on social media and that it'll get people to pay more attention to them and get people to notice them for the first time. I think that's such a small anecdotal example, however, compared to what the reality of the market is.
Everybody wants to be that person, but yeah, how many are?
I mean, the good thing that when you look at pricing for craft beer, one of the benefits is that a majority of growth right now is taking place between case sales or case dollars where it costs $40 to $60. For a case of beer. This is stuff like Victory, Golden Monkey will show up there. Dogfish Head brands will be in that range. And there's a significant amount of growth that's driving what's happening with craft beer volume within that general price range. Part of that's market. Part of it, too, is just the fact where, I think people recognize that that's where they can exist and play, and people are willing to pay that little bit more to have something that's going to be different and unique and special as well. And so I think it's hard for us. Myself, I'm certainly in this. I think about beer far too much on a daily basis. And to think about these kinds of really interesting anecdotal examples. But in the grand scheme of things, there's such a small percentage of what exists in the marketplace that people are very much still relying on flagships and even get to Three Floyds. You'll forgive my ignorance. I've only had Three Floyds, I think, once before. But like Alpha King is probably one of what moves the chains for them, right? It's not necessarily the Dark Lord or some very small level special thing. And so people are still looking at these individual brands as what's going to help them overall.
Yeah, I don't think they make probably a lot more off Gumball Head and stuff like that than they do.
Yeah.
Now, but here we go. We've got 2,500 new tiny little tadpole breweries in the works. So things are going to be changing. I think it's time we take a break. Let's take a little bit shorter of a break, and then we'll come back and a lighter topic, just the future of distribution as we know it, which Brian Roth is going to break down for us. All that and maybe more if we have time on the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. Welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, joined by my guests, Ray Daniels, Dan Pichet, Adam Smith, Ashley Brandt, and Brian Roth, who's in a deep V-neck T-shirt. So I'm going to lead off with you, Brian. You wrote something.
3 of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote 3 of them. That's right. It was too much. It was a 3-part thing. It was very sprawling and long, but it
wasn't that long.
It would have been we would have been talking about it for the whole.
It's all that filler because he broke it up into 3 pieces. He had to keep reintroducing everybody.
Exactly, but what I can do up. Can you turn him on? There you go. Up, search.
That's the only way I was getting awarded, right?
So
hello. But did you want to set up? You had the third part was called The Future of Distribution, right? Delivery in Distress, I think, was the name of the series. But it was The Future of Beer Distribution, right?
Yeah. So the crux of the series kind of came about. This was back in January and February. When out in Oregon, there was a bit of news because there were deals where there was consolidation amongst a handful of beer distributor businesses there, and it kind of piqued my interest just because I wanted to think a bit more critically, I suppose, about the kind of why that was happening and where that put things right now at this particular moment in time for where things exist for beer distributors. And so the idea of the series across these 3 parts was more or less to kind of set the stage and then give some examples of for the middle tier, I think, is famous or infamous, depending on your particular point of view, for not wanting to change. And we see that a lot play out in legal senses around the country, where states are dealing with lawsuits or introducing new laws to be a bit more friendly toward breweries as prohibition laws get updated. And so the series kind of looked at ways that a few businesses and a few examples of how things are changing and why now is kind of the time this is happening as well. One of them being with Night Shift Distributing in Massachusetts, that's focusing solely on a small collection of craft-only brands. There's an example here in North Carolina. It was a multi-generation, a family-owned distributor that's a Miller Coors house in Raleigh, North Carolina, where one of the things that they've done to kind of adapt to the changing industry is they've created a podcast, which is an award-winning podcast that's won a few awards from the North American Guild of Beer Writers, as
Never
well
heard
as
of them
being
or their
named.
awards.
I'm sorry?
Never heard of them or their awards.
Or their awards, which you may or may not be familiar, as well as they were named amongst one of the prominent disruptors in the alcohol industry by magazine Beverage World is the magazine. And so looking at kind of the tangible anecdotes that they provided, as well as the broader industry of kind of where things stand and why now is a time that people may want to look at how it's changing.
I mean, is this a big change, Ray? I mean, this has been going on for a little bit, right? I mean, craft breweries opening up their own distributors, right?
People were doing that in the 90s, mostly out of, self-preservation. Two Brothers was one of the ones here locally that did that. Yeah. Couldn't get
Brooklyn
distribution.
did it, I think, right?
Yeah, Brooklyn had distribution for a while. I mean, I think distribution has many different shapes and phases, and it is definitely dependent upon having a model that works. And as the industry changes, then the distribution models that work are going to change, and that's the name of the game. So, there are going to be new business forms, or at least new business models. People who take advantage of new business models who are going to come along and have new businesses. And I think the other thing is that the distributor population expansion and contraction has been counter-cyclical to the brewery model.
Yes.
That in
we'll get Two Brothers.
1980 we had I think the number was 5,000 beer distributors. It might be 8, but it was a huge number of beer distributors in the United States and less than 100 breweries, right? And now we've gotten to the point where there's really functionally less than 2,000 beer distributors and 6,000 breweries. So, the math of how many suppliers a distributor has to work with and how many options a brewer has really, really changed over the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah. I mean, and people have asked me locally, or me personally, have asked me, what distributor should I sign with? Local guys and out of state guys. And usually, depending on who they are, there's 0.75 options. Well, they're kind of good and they're kind of good. They both stink, but whatever. Right. And that's just kind of how it is,
Right, and that's the real shame of it, is that all of those traditional distributors are basically working the same model. And some of them are doing a little better than the others. Some of them are a little bit nicer. Some of them a little bit better people. But the bottom line is they should have different models. There should be different models of distributorship that are set up to serve and deliver different kinds of breweries to different kinds of retailers. And that would be a much more efficient. It would serve the market better than the system we have had.
Ashley's a big fan of beer distribution, so let's have him talk.
I love him. No, I thought this was a wonderful piece. I
Thank you.
Kudos to Brian.
Thank you.
Citing Kim Clement and a lot of her stuff, in this, and Ray's point, somebody's got to figure it out. I don't know how that happens in a restricted environment where lobbying gets more done in the industry than decent disruption. But I really did think the link to that Pico Brew article was incredibly interesting, because it brought up this point where I could care less about the system and how it's going.
We talked about it on the show before, so people
right,
I think are somewhat familiar with it. Just so you know.
But this notion of everybody becoming a brewer has nothing to do with Pico. I mean, it's really, can this happen? Can more restaurants just become brewers to try and get around a lot of these different distribution problems? And I thought that was fascinating.
What struck me most about that was the CEO was explicitly clear that part of the reason they wanted to make this model for a restaurant was because they wanted to subvert the distribution tier. And so, to Ray's point, where it's a changing system, and we've seen this happen on the production side on one tier, and it seems to be a natural progression that people should and could start thinking about it in the middle tier as well. And that Pico Brew, that just jumped out at me when I read that story, is that they identified that specifically as that's a place where they can find a niche and
how does
utilize
Pico Brew,
a lack of progress.
And Pico Brew aside, that model is something that's really interesting to me. There's a Depot Nuevo up in Wilmette does this. They're a Mexican restaurant that has a small system, and they sell their beer that they make in there. Stockholm's out in Geneva does this. They're like a bar brew pub, but they make their beer there.
Nano brewery.
Absolutely,
thing,
they don't do
pot
bad
on
stuff.
A stove type stuff.
Exactly, they do fun stuff.
But how does that disrupt distribution? I don't see how that disrupts. It doesn't. Yeah, I don't see how that disrupts distribution. That's just a house brand that you can have.
Right. So that's the first step. Pico Brew is kind of bringing you the next step, which is here are these packets. You don't need to make Maplewood. We'll pay Maplewood a royalty. We'll put it in our system, and I can have Maplewood without a distributor, without anything. I can have fresh Maplewood from this brewery in Portland.
But hold on,
whenever
to me,
I want it.
This smacks of why get really well-made white bread when there's perfectly good Wonder Bread that you could just have? I don't know. It's like
who says their system's not going to do it?
It's Keurig for beer. It's Keurig for beer.
What if there was a Keurig that actually did it better? And that just because this system doesn't make it to the level of the type you want, that doesn't mean they're not going to come along and do it. There's that guy.
That's true.
I loved this thing about the guy who had the vacuum sealed aging process out in L.A., where chemically and taste-wise, people are getting very close to aging something for 20 years. And
you're talking about the rum and stuff like that guy does? Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking sounds a lot like some guy named Ken Moore about 50 years ago saying, we're going to put all the restaurants out of business by putting an oven in everybody's house.
Right.
Right? That didn't happen. And it was the Keurig thing, too. It's like, did Keurig put Starbucks out of business? No. Didn't happen.
I'm just forced to have a crappy cup of coffee every morning.
Yeah. Come on. And so, we're gonna continue to have breweries. We're going to continue to have beer distributors. We're going to continue to have bars and restaurants and retailers. All those things are going to continue to happen.
Sure. And probably the first thing you see is that the little guys get together and find a small distributor or somebody they sponsor who. The beautiful thing was the night shift guy saying, look, I only want 30 in my portfolio.
Right.
That's what I can sell. That's what I can manage. That's what I can do, and have a good conscience about it to all the people I represent, because more than 30, it's crazy to think that somebody's out there with 200, 2,000 in a portfolio.
Jerry Nelson has been on the show before, and here, at least publicly, here locally in Chicago, it's kind of like a known thing that what happened with him is he was signed with a distributor, and I think there were some issues on both their sides. I think he didn't have a real sales force, and he also felt like he was buried in their book. And, he saw them bring in another out-of-market sour brewery after they signed him, who was, maybe more well-known nationally. And right as he was trying to get off the ground and was like, what the heck, guys? I mean, come on.
It's also important to have your own sales, at least
Yes.
rep, not sales team, but at least
Well,
a
that
sales
is something
rep.
that is, I think, yes, definitely on.
And he never did that to my
Yeah,
knowledge.
that's on Jerry. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, I'm not saying that, it's a bad thing because obviously it's something he didn't want.
But neither
right?
did this
But-
other brewery. Yeah, right.
So, I think
But he got
that's
buried.
important.
Yeah. And the smaller guy can, even if you do have your own sales staff, you're going to have a smaller sales staff than some of the bigger guys, and you're just going to be less of a priority, and you can be buried deep in somebody's distribution book. So, I mean, I do like the idea of having smaller books. I mean, there's ones who have like 100 brands plus
I
here
know.
in Chicago.
And it's,
Yeah, more than that, exactly.
Well, as a brewery, you have to, I don't know how other states work or other cities or, how counties. But what do we have in Chicago? 5, 6 major distributors, right? We have choices as breweries, and you can shop around. Now, there are certain distributors that say we're full. That they don't, because, like you said, like with Night Shift, they don't want to do a disservice to their suppliers, right? Their breweries, but I don't know. I think just to go back, I think it's hugely important for breweries to have their own representation, even though they're with a distributor.
Absolutely.
That's very, very important. And if you don't do that, I don't know that you've seen your full potential with a distributor, with a wholesaler. That's important. And I think as a retailer, you know that, Chris. Having your rep come in and be like, oh, hey, Maplewood's got a new beer. Cool. Okay. What's it like? Oh, it's an IPA.
Well,
cool.
This goes back to Ray's point about having somebody who knows what they're doing on a business side. I can't tell you the number of distribution contracts I've looked at where people come to me and say, oh, yeah, I entered into this back when things were just starting, and I signed away all my rights, not knowing what the F I was doing.
Yeah.
And I got a bad price. I'm going to suffer for it now. I didn't put in any sales goals. I didn't talk about sales goals. I didn't talk about pull dates. I didn't talk about who was responsible for getting bad. Sorry, that's the first one of the night. For getting bad stuff out of the market and putting new stuff in. These are all things that once you get a savvy individual there to help negotiate and deal things for you, you can actually better your own position.
Man,
if not just have an actual position.
The plugs portion of the show is not.
Oh, it doesn't need to be
5
me.
minutes.
There are plenty of people to do it. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And
Savvy
I'm not offering that
individual.
service. I'm saying you should be smart enough as
1-800
as
yeah.
a brewery owner to think about these things and understand that this is part of the game. This is what you have to do.
So, what is the future of distribution, Brian? Like in 1 to 2 letters? No. What is it?
Well, I think what Ray said really nails it. Is that the way that we've seen things shift and become a bit more focused on the production side and the way that that's changed, there's no reason why it shouldn't or couldn't be happening in the middle tier as well. Amidst all of the consolidation that happens, just this week there were 2 large AB wholesalers who merged in Indiana. There is ample opportunity, I think, to recognize where there are opportunities to succeed and be closer, more efficient, more beneficial to where a lot of these smaller producers exist.
Sure.
I'll tell you where I think the future of distribution is, at least here locally, and I'm just going to guess that that's going to be relevant to what's going on in other parts of the country, is the distributors who were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, very eager to hop on the craft game, take on a bunch of craft accounts, have picked their 2 or 3 craft accounts to go along with their big, I'll call it industrial beers or whatever you want to call it, and are very uninterested in really going outside just the normal chain of command, normal working process that they do, which sometimes craft beer and the smaller guys need a little bit of extra attention. They're talking to specialty stores, their specialty products. I have seen 2 of the major houses here in Chicago be more and more and more unwilling to bring in specialty items. Me offering to like pre-buy stuff. No, we're not bringing any more stuff from them. Nope, we don't want to do it. And just letting these brands just kind of wither. And some of these brands are kind of big brands. Like, sometimes it's small stuff, but other times it's just maybe a big brand who just, it seems to me, is not maybe associated with a target or is not a priority for them. And is now like, listen, this is what it is, and we're not going to be bending over backwards because it doesn't make us any money. And we're seeing that you can't just go chasing craft. The future isn't all craft. It's a little craft. We have a little craft. Here's our little craft. Deal with it. That's how I'm seeing stuff change, like within the past less than a year.
Would cure that, hands down, or lift the single territory restriction. Allow people to compete within the market about who can buy what and try and sell it. Yeah, absolutely.
That would do it.
Imagine if it, and this is funny, the Beer Industry Fair Dealing Act in Illinois says that, but it also says it's subject to state law, and there's a section of the actual code that says, territorial exclusivity doesn't have to be. So there are these interesting issues that people can make hay with if they read the statutes and went out there and litigated. First thing, everybody's got to manifest some revolutionary consciousness here in the beer industry as far as manufacturers go, and start lobbying and changing the laws to get the exact kind of thing we have with wine, and a lot of greater freedoms in terms of how you can get this out, how you can distribute it, how you can ship it. And I guess the other notion that I really liked from Brian's piece and thinking about Night Shift was guys like Brian Kirby. Find somebody who's got the time and the effort and has the passion and wants to do it, and stick with them.
Brian Kirby is kind of a small craft-focused distribution here. He's
Absolutely.
Been on the show.
He's wonderful. He's been on the show, and he's there doing exactly what Night Shift talked about, which is to keep it to a level where you can respect everything that you sell, and you can take the time and the effort to go through everything in that portfolio and be passionate about it to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just think net result here is like we haven't seen a lot of creativity yet in the middle tier, and that's what we really need. They basically took craft beer and said, all right, we have an established model for how we distribute beer. We're gonna and you're a brewer, so we're gonna plug you into our model and move forward from there.
Yeah, it seems like the distributors, from my standpoint, have been, and maybe this is just me, but I don't think it is. They were really excited for a little bit. They really wanted to get on with it. They really, and that excitement was kind of a driving force where maybe the logistics people just had to kind of figure it out. And now I think it's kind of settled back in where they're like, no, we don't do things that way. Well, this beer really benefits from this. Not having so you're not bringing any new SKUs. Well, half the SKUs from this brewery will never be made again. So you're not bringing in a new SKU. It's their next thing. No, we're not going to do it. And just being so blind to what craft is, or maybe not blind, just not interested in that segment of craft. And it's really a bummer. I think kind of other than going to your local tap room or getting a self-distribution has been great to kind of combat this, but going through distributors has just gotten it's almost worse. It's just hard to deal with some of these guys now to get the best craft product from around the world and from around the country. That is what I've seen happening with the bigger distributors here in Chicago.
Well, maybe somebody like Amazon, it might be that you could solve that.
Yeah, that'll make everything better for everyone.
Amazon has been coming to my mind because what Amazon has done is taken product distribution, product sales in general, and turn it on its head, and said, you know what, we're going to charge you a fee for this, and we're going to charge you a fee for this, and we're going to charge you a fee for this if you're the supplier, because that's what they need to make their model work. And I think beer distributors haven't done that. They basically said, we have a model, we know how our model works, we're going to stick you in our model. If it doesn't work, well, then we're going to change the way, we're going to try and make the way you operate, brewer and consumer, change to fit our model, rather than changing our model to fit what's going on in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And Skewmageddon is the best example of that. I mean, beer distributors have been whining and crying about SKU proliferation for the last 10 years, and it's like, and they think they're special, honestly. And I'm sorry, I love distributors in general. I think they're an important part of our market, but I think there's been a lot of whining about this, and I think it's very short-sighted on their part. Look at what's happened to American grocery retail in the last 40 years. In 1980, there were 10,000 SKUs in the average grocery store. Today, there are, I think, close to 50,000. It's at least 25. So 2.5 to 5 times as many SKUs in the average grocery store today as there were 30, 40 years ago. Beer is not special. Beer is part of what's going on in the food and beverage chain. Pull up your pants, get over it, and deal with all the SKUs, right? So
Right.
you can... And a lot of them are not doing that. They're just saying, no, we have a model, it works, we're going to stick with our model. Well, okay, that's great. You can do that, but somebody else is going to come along and deal with the reality of the marketplace and the suppliers and take your
there's
business
that,
from you.
And there's also someone, I think it's like, hold up your end. You signed a deal to distribute this brand. I'm trying to bring in this brand. I'm willing to pre-buy. I'm willing to do a layer on a pallet. No.
The people who
No.
run the wholesalers are
Bananas.
they're old school. Yeah. And just like Ray was saying, they're not willing to change yet.
Oh, no. They're fighting it tooth and nail. And I've had
Absolutely.
breweries even saying, we will help you. We will go over it. And then one of the guys from a brewery came up to me and was like, all right, we went to the brewery. We went to the warehouse. They're not going to change. We looked at this guy's system. They're expert, and he was using air quotes. He was like, I saw it was a book. It was handwritten scribbles of what's in their warehouse. And this was a top brewery with a, we have a picking system that doesn't let us do anything. It's so high tech. You can't comprehend how. And then the person came to us and was like, this is what we're dealing with. I saw it. It's a one of those black and white school books with scribbles all over it. And I mean, so that's what you. So if you guys want distribution here, have fun doing that. Have fun dealing with that sort of stuff.
To put it on par in dollar cents, if I remember correctly, in the state of Texas, the wholesalers lobby spent as much, if not more, than the oil lobby in terms of their donations to politicians.
There's
and that
reasons
speaks
for
to
that,
the idea
though.
that they don't want to change because they want either a system that has been in place or a system that does not change what's been in place too much.
Yeah, they're huge lobbyists, but it's also because they're all over the place. There isn't oil all over the country, and there's distributors all over the place, and they're doing it at the local level. They're doing a lot of donations, but absolutely, they're one of like the top 5 lobbying groups.
I've always heard they were number 3, but
that's what I had heard
lawyers
too.
and doctors,
3,
but
I had heard number 3 too.
But to their defense, to the defense of the people who should be innovating in the middle tier, there's a middle ground here. You can keep the regulations the same. You can say, hey, we love the 3-tier system because it
forced share, right?
Yeah, right.
We're guaranteed money,
right? But that doesn't mean we have to continue to do business the way we've always done business, right? If you're a craft brewery and you've got 20 SKUs that you want to crank through every year, well, guess what? We're going to give you 2% less margin every year than before. So
yeah. We are running out of time. I think we could keep this going for a while, but sadly, we have come to the end of our time. I wanted to thank my guests, Brian Roth, Ashley Brandt, Adam Smith, Dan Pichet, and Ray Daniels, as well as producer Serge, who really kind of stepped it up in the second half. I'm not going to lie. Even though he's literally texting right now, looking down at his phone. That's fine. No, it doesn't matter that you're putting it down now.
There was a time he was looking away from all of us, which is nice.
It's good. It's good. No, you're doing fine. You're doing great. You're doing a great job. He also has been working without headphones for most of the show. But I wanted to thank you guys also for listening. Hey, thanks for you guys who left the reviews. Really appreciate that. If you guys enjoy listening to the show, We have won an award from the Guild of Beer Writers, by the way.
It's the North American Guild.
North
of Beer
American
Writers.
Guild of Beer Writers. We've won an award from them. It's not just distributors, who I'm sure are. I want to listen to. What's the name of that podcast that won?
Tales of the Cask.
Tales of the Cask. All right.
From Mims Distributing in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Awesome. Cool.
The cask ale's hot right now, right?
Oh,
right,
it's
Ray?
the hottest thing. The hottest thing right now. I wanted to thank all you guys out there listening. I wanted any final words out there, guys. No calls to action, as you guys. You're all pros. You're all close to 5-timers at this point. Any final words, Brian? Anything for you?
A happy baseball season. Was really thrilled to see Revolution getting a good spot with the Chicago White Sox. Good for them.
Heck yeah. Sorry about those Blue Devils, kind of. Not really. I say with a huge grin on my face. Anyway, that's fine. You'll have, I'm sure, 5 new elite freshmen next year, and I'll see you. We'll see you. You'll be just fine. Ashley, anything for you?
Evanston Marshmallow drop tomorrow. James Park, 11 o'clock. Bring your kids from a helicopter. Tons of marshmallows.
Marshmallows
from
the
sky.
Holy!
I'm not
a,
joking.
it's on a Friday?
It's Good Friday. It's on a Good Friday.
All right. That's interesting. Okay. I'm intrigued. Helicopter marshmallow drop.
That's amazing.
I like that. I might.
I got nothing now.
Okay. Well, that was yours too. You were
I was
going to
say no. We're actually playing with
do yours from
marshmallow
a blend?
we're playing with marshmallows at the lounge. We just did like a pineapple, orange,
Oh, nice. Creamsicle.
marshmallow that we want to top some beers with. I think would be pretty.
We're going to be randling some stuff tomorrow too.
Oh,
We
yeah?
got some Nelson Sauvin whole cone hops.
Ooh, where the F did you get those?
Yeah, there's only one place I think in the country you can get them, and that's where I got them
That's
from.
amazing.
And then we've got some Frederick Saul cherry wine that we're soaking cherries in. We're going to mess around with some stuff. Anyway,
All right.
Dan, anything for you?
Let's go Loyola.
Yeah.
I think that'll be a good game. Yeah, and my family's from Rogers Park, so
Nice.
yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Should be fun. I hope they get to the finals.
Against Villanova, right?
I hope they get to the. I mean, it depends. I may hope they win. I
Did
may
you
hope
read
they lose.
the tea leaves yet? Do you know who's winning?
I'm not going to say anything that would jinx the outcome. Why would
Bill
I say
Self.
anything like that? Ray, anything for you in closing?
No.
No.
Oh.
Okay. Very Jerry-esque.
Go get your CBS.
Yes.
Everybody's already agreed with Ray enough that he
Yeah.
doesn't. I agree with Ray.
Thanks so much. Thanks to everyone, including producer Serge. And we will see you all next week for more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. Go Nova!
Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.